My fellow Americans,
how much worse can it get?
I know how disappointed you feel because
the vast majority of the media has said nothing of substance.
This is painful, and it will be for a long time. But I want you to remember this.
The change only happens when ordinary people get involved.
It will not be a peaceful change.
To quote the great Leonard Cohen,
it will be a usurpation.
And to all who are watching this,
Democrats or Republicans,
whether you are young or whether you're young at heart, I won't stop.
Those who ignore these elemental existential facts are traitors, and the usurper will live in infamy.
May God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Discourse. I am your host, Brandon, and we have an amazing, great, good, mediocre, awful, cut where appropriate here, editor, episode for you tonight, and it's packed full of amazing topics, just jam-packed full. And joining me, as always, to break down these topics, add a little nuance to your lives, is my panel of powerfully progressive pundits. First up, as always, is my lovely producer, Richard Green. Say hello, Richard.
Hello, everyone. It looks like some of my shots got messed up in the meantime, so I'm going to be fixing that shortly. But we do have a great show. We're probably not going to be able to pack it all in, so make sure to subscribe to the SoundCloud, and you'll be able to hear the extended show. So make sure to stay tuned for that, or to check that out, and I'll go back to fixing what I got fixed over here.
Absolutely. The SoundCloud link should be in the description below, so once we're off of here live, you'll be able to pick up where we left off there. Also joining me, as always, is my Socratic life partner, Adair Shmidt. Say hello.
One sec, my computer just decided it's gonna now mess up, so hold on 1 second. I'm gonna set this to midnight. Okay, so we're good. Yeah, what's up, folks? I'm here bringing all the black rage that I can muster in my 6-foot frame because white people have pissed me off for an entire week. So what's good, everybody? Stay tuned. I'm gonna holler at y'all. It'll be fun.
Sounds wonderful. And rounding off this square is the lovely John, aka Alexander the Mediocre. Say hello, John.
Mediocre now, huh? Not just Matt. You just change it around.
I mean, it's fancy. You're gonna have a title. It should be fancy.
All right, absolutely. I'll stick with
Formal.
it. Thanks for having me on again. This is probably one of the things I look forward to the most since I've been unemployed. So thank you.
Oh my God, how sad for you.
Yeah. Well, I just miss you guys.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I get that a lot. Anyway, so to start off this show, and I don't care if answering the question I'm going to ask takes the entire first hour of the show, because I want to break it down. So the question that I pose to everyone here, because I've heard, I've heard this being posited, right, by some people, straw man right there, but it's a good framing. Is the media under Trump better or worse? Don't answer that question yet, because I know someone's going to jump in with like, boo, no, worse. But to add some artificial boundaries to that question, what I mean is like basically the corporate media, mainstream media, your MSNBCs, your NBCs, your Fox Newses, your Washington Post, your New York Times, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And by worse, I mean, are they doing a better or worse job of informing people as to what is actually going on and what is actually important, along with, are they being generally ethical at time, as we I've seen general ethical question.
General ethical. That sounds like a terrible TV show.
Yeah.
Sorry, what?
General ethical. That sounds like a terrible TV show.
It sounds like a great show about lawyers. General ethics.
Yeah, it sounds like something Dick Wolf would produce, like executive producer Dick Wolf.
Anyway,
Oh man.
I'm gonna put this out there first.
Yeah, let's get.
I think that the media is pretty much exactly the same as it's been for the past 20 years. It's just that Trump is kind of acting as he's acting in a lot of ways, as this like revealing factor. He reveals a lot of the flaws in the system and shines a light on them. and just based on who he is. And I think in a lot of ways, Trump is corporate media's kryptonite. I think they proved that during the primary, and they continue to prove that. But I'll open up that question, so feel free.
No, well, I just want to say worse for many reasons. So anyone else can answer now and
All right.
give it.
No, give us some of the reasons. Give us some of the reasons. Like, don't just say worse for many reasons. Like,
Well, all right. First off, let's
You're getting ready, hyped up and stuff. Man.
Adair, you go first. Come on, man.
No, it's okay. John, rather, go ahead, please. I want to hear what you have to say.
So one of the reasons why I think that's worse, I mean, I agree with you that Trump has ripped the mask off, but I don't think that Trump has ripped the mask off for media. I think that Trump has ripped the mask off for American policy. He's no longer conducting American policy, especially foreign policy, with like a smile and a good speech. Instead, we have an idiot with a Swiss cheese brain running around, bumbling into things, and still accomplishing all the crap that we've done all across the world. So in that regard, I agree that to an extent there is a mask that's been ripped off. I just don't think it's the media's mask. I think it's been, the mask of the institutions of America being good.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask a follow-up question to that, right? So you make a really good point. And so my question would be, if Trump is ripping off this mask that America has been allowed to put on, at least for America, right? Like I think that the mask has been ripped off for the rest of the world a long time ago, like under Bush. I think this idea that Trump is what is making America an embarrassment, and before he wasn't, like, America was an embarrassment, is a bit of it shows a lack of being able to think outside of America,
or historical context, period.
But yeah, so my question would be, do you think the media is doing a good job of revealing the fact that he's actually ripped this mask off?
In a way, but also in the way that they're covering it, and the way that they're going about doing it is completely inept as well. I mean, like, you look at a lot of the stories that we're getting now, and I'm looking at the Washington Post and the New York Times especially. How many stories a day do you think that we get from anonymous sources? Last week I looked at it, was just having this conversation with someone, and it came up with 9 from CNN and 11 from New York Times in one day, all based on anonymous, undeclared officials. Now, under any other place, this wouldn't be like the headline news. Under any other president, this wouldn't be the headline news. It wouldn't be anonymous officials say this, anonymous officials say that, which is basically amounting to gossip at this point. But now that is the news of the day. And as we saw with, the Manchester bombing, because of those anonymous officials, the UK is now no longer sharing information with us regarding the investigation in the Manchester bombing. And what was interesting that I saw, and this goes to why the media is worse now, is rather than talk about the fact that this incredibly leaking intelligence community, which is giving all of these anonymous sources to reporters in order to damage the Trump administration, has now led to, the UK not sharing information with us because they're worried about the same leaking atmosphere. All of these people and all these reporting agencies are saying, oh, it's because of Trump. Meanwhile, Trump, and hold on, and I'm not going to defend Trump often. There are 2 things I will defend Trump on. Trump from the beginning has said that these leaks that are coming from the IC, that are unauthorized leaks, are going to be damaging. So you can't then turn around and say, hey, look, the orange Cheeto monster orangutan is responsible for something that he's been trying to combat since he took office. You can't do that. That's disingenuous when you yourself are fomenting the relationship right now where anonymous sourcing is the majority of the reporting that you're doing.
Okay. I'm going to stop you there. I just want to add this one thing before we bring Adair and Rich in. So a poll just came out that apparently the majority of Americans believe that mainstream media, the people who I just described at the beginning of the show, that sort of loose category, if we can agree that that's the mainstream media, is fake news. So I'm just putting that context out there, and I think we're going to come back around to what you just said, John. But I want to get Adair's opinion about whether or not the media is worse or better under Trump.
I'm going to be real. I don't honestly think that the media could have gotten much worse than it did when we started with the primary season. The fact of the matter is, Trump is not. Trump is Trump. Like, he's meant for TV. He's made for TV. He says all these outlandish, outrageous things. and media outlets eat them up. But that's what media outlets do. They do not exist to give you news. They exist to sell ad space. They exist to make money. They don't give a shit about whether or not you're getting anything that's accurate or fair or whatever. They exist to make money out of certain demographics, and Trump makes money for everybody because either you love Trump or you hate Trump. There's really not much of a middle ground. And so that makes for great news. That makes for great news, at least. Great TV for these folks. So that's all this is about. I really don't think that American media could get much worse than it has been. There hasn't been integrity in American media since I want to say at least the time right after Watergate. The fact of the matter is American media, just like every other corporation in America, just like every other sector of American life, is corrupt as shit. Nobody gives a damn. Nobody's there to do the right thing. And so that's why it's incumbent upon independent media sources to actually come up and try to fill that gap and be like, hey, we're a news organization. So you have your people like Big who actually report on the news, and you have shows like us who come out and we talk about things like this, and we give that opinion, and we're more of an opinion piece, but we don't masquerade as an opinion panel masquerading as we're giving the straight news, as it is just the facts. No, we're telling you our opinion. And the fact of the matter is news media in America no longer does that. It only exists to sell ad space.
Well, so I mean, my opinion is basically fact, right? I'm infallible, and much like the Pope.
Shut your ass up.
Yeah, shut the fuck up, dude.
Okay. Anyway. Okay. So I agree with what you said there. And this is why at the beginning of the show I said that it didn't get worse. It's just the profit motives have changed. Just like in the primary, it was profitable to basically platform Trump in a if not in a negative light, in just a neutral light. Like to break that card him out like a sideshow. That hasn't changed. It's just the acceptability of being neutral about Trump has changed. And I mean, I'm going to expand upon that in a bit, but I want to get Richard's take on this if he's not too busy working behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with basically what everybody said so far. I think the media, it may seem worse to some folks that have been attuned to a certain type of media, are following a certain narrative on the media, and having Trump there disrupting what was the coverage of Obama and Republicans as it existed before Trump was president. I think there's been some shifts there in the profit motive. I know it's gotten obnoxious for a lot of people how often Trump is on television during the primaries and during the election, when they would show his empty podium for like extended periods of time. So in some certain ways, they did things. They just strictly from a production perspective, they were a worse production during this Trump period. But I think again, a lot of it has to do with the profit motives, and again, why they're covering the way he is. I think there's a lot more to go into there, but I'll let you move on to the next aspect of it there, Brandon.
Okay, so when I think about this question, first I want to say, like, I think it'd be disingenuous to pretend and keep going without saying that the media in its totality is covering relatively everything bad that Trump is doing. Right. I think that, like, if you go to basically any site over, New York Times, Washington Post, you'll find, the list of his executive orders and why they're problematic. You'll find a list of some of his, the problem with his judicial choices and what's wrong with SCOTUS, stuff like that. I think that, that's.
I have a but there.
I would say, but I'm talking about what is being prioritized. And what is really being pushed in the mainstream? But you can push back for.
I got
you can push back on your Brandon. You can push on your that. Why don't you guys save that for the after show?
We do every time.
Go ahead.
And then we spoon.
You can catch it on the SoundCloud, so make sure you go there. But anyway,
yeah, exactly. Listen to Brandon and I deep spooning. Anyway, so what I was saying was that the but is, it's not a matter of that they're not covering his negative aspects, because they are. And I actually do appreciate that now. But the problem is of the framing. Like, when they're talking about Trump killing a lot of the Obama executive orders with his own executive orders, the way that they frame it is these executive orders have always been in place, when in reality, some of them haven't even taken place because Obama didn't want to do them early on in his term. And then the other way they frame it, like foreign policy and wars, they don't actually give an accurate framing of the Obama administration's follies in that regard. So go on.
I'm going to stop you there, because that is exactly what I was going to say, right? So there are three things I think about when I think of when I think about this question. The first is the Russia thing. And I call it the Russia thing, but because over the life cycle of this Russia thing, it has transformed and and evolved and devolved. It's gone from like the Russia is, the sort. It's always been vague, right? So the idea that Russia hacked the election is such a vague thing, such a vague. Even if it were true, it's a very vague thing to say, right? So like, what exactly, what part of the election did they hack? Did they what does that mean exactly? That narrative is very vague, and of course that has now changed to Russia influenced the election, another very vague term that could essentially mean everything. The people who seem to be doing the investigation seem to be running away from it a little bit. That's one aspect of it. We can talk about that in a second. The second aspect is the aspect that you brought up, John, which is I think it was Eve Pacer. I can't pronounce her name, and I don't know the phonetic whatever of it about in Vice, or she described. She didn't really go into the totality of it, but liberal fake news, right? Which is essentially liberals identifying very banal things or very banal things that Trump is doing that are not different from things that Obama did, or that are not really out of the ordinary, but blowing them out of proportion. And the example that she gave was the FCC case against Steve Colbert, which was, completely run of the mill. But this can, this applies to a lot of things. This applies to,
Saudi Arabia.
The Saudi Arabia arms deal, which was an Obama administration thing.
Staffing.
This applies. Yeah. This also applies to, as John brought up, this trend of the Obama era regulation being rolled back by Trump, which a lot of did the new rule here, Bill Maher, new rule. If it wasn't in place under Obama for at least a year, at least 18 months to a year, it's not an Obama era regulation. If he signed it in October of 2016 to go into effect January 23rd of 2017, that's not an Obama era regulation. That's a political power play. It's a smart one, but it's not. That's not an Obama era regulation. And we can talk about other examples of this liberal fake news, like this sort of banal, like the White House website going down and being edited, attorney generals being fired, staff changing, things that just happen. And the third aspect of this that I think about is, I kind of forgot it actually, but is war.
Yeah.
It's the way the mainstream media handles war, which has always been, at least for the past 20 years, been their downfall. Because as we saw with the first strike in Syria, they just lost their mind. Like they immediately fell into step. As we saw with the
Using
Marine's
the
wife,
term first strike really loosely in this case, but continue.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, incredibly loosely.
Yeah.
Incredibly.
I think we all know what you mean, though. Go ahead. I didn't mean to disrupt.
Hey, feel free to address any of those points. You can start in order, you cannot. But those are what I think about. And I say I think they're getting worse because, and the Russia thing ties into John's anonymous source thing.
Let's actually just sit down and really parse out what we mean by worse. And here's why I don't believe that it can actually get worse, because everything you mentioned, I think is good. I think those are absolutely valid reasons. But let's put that into context of things. That is par for the course, and that's been par for the course. In the media, we've seen such a lack of ethics when everything went from, the newspapers being about news and news organizations actually being about news, to most people watching Good Morning America, which is not a news show. It's an entertainment program. CNN is not news. CNN is entertainment. MSNBC is not news. It is entertainment. And that is where we start.
We're also not.
Huh?
We're
not news. We're very much entertainment, but we do not masquerade.
We're just kind of a bunch of scumbags. I mean, lying.
We don't masquerade as a news program. And that's the biggest difference between us and people like on CNN and MSNBC and quote unquote Fox News. We do, except, when they get called on in lawsuits, because Fox News has said, well, we're not actually a news corporation. And that's that's the intrinsic difference there, is these are not actual news corporations. They are media outlets. And so we don't have news in this country.
Quickly, I got to push back a bit on that, and just that the idea that we have this golden age of media where the media was news and stuff like that, I think is a false idea. I mean, we go back to Pulitzer, the namesake of the Pulitzer Prize. He made a lot of his fortune in yellow journalism, essentially.
That's fine.
Which is
You can have
basically
issues.
I mean, it's just basically clickbaiting. Is essentially who the person who's revered as like starting journalism and actually paid for the first journalism school. That person made their fortune in yellow journalism, or at least in part in yellow journalism. So the idea that there was this golden age of journalism, maybe Cronkite, but then you have to ignore like some of the racial problems that were going on during that time. And like, so like, it's a common thing that we do. It's like one of those
never
things
said
that
there was
we
a golden age in media. So
well, like, I mean, just that there was a time where the media sphere or mediascape was mostly news, I think is something that we like to tell ourselves, but it's not the actual case. I think it's like it's similar to like the good old days, in my view. But go ahead.
Remember showing the pictures
hold on. I need to push back on that, because to say that there was never a time when news was mostly news, I think that's unfair. You're right. There's always been clickbait shit going on because news has always been run by corporations, but there was in fact a time where ethics in news actually meant something to a significant number of journalists. Today we don't have that. What we have is nothing but tabloids. You look back, you used to be able to expect that the president would be covered rigorously and with integrity. Nowadays, it's just trying to get as many clicks as possible because all they want to do is sell ad space.
I think a lot of that honor integrity is manufactured in our minds in our reimagining of history.
I don't think so. I really don't think so, because there are actual
I'm not saying that there weren't really good journalists. I just don't necessarily think that they were.
Watergate was covered. Watergate was covered. Bill Clinton was covered. We started seeing an influx of BS news around the 80s and the 90s, sure. But there was integrity in journalism. The reason why there could be some integrity in journalism by journalists, and let's not conflate journalists and news outlets. Let's make sure those two things are distinctly clear. I will never say news outlets have been 100% ethical, but I will say their journalists at one point in time had a sense of ethics. And that is the biggest
I screwed up by picking a fight with Adair at this point. He's already ready to go. I should have stayed away from that, but go ahead.
I'll back up Adair. On this. Like you said, before 1996, before the Telecommunications Act, you had more journalists on the ground. And as a direct result of having more journalists on the ground, there probably was a pervading ethics that journalists had to follow. But the news outlets themselves probably were always corrupted. And one of the best examples you can have of this is the way the AP treated Robert Parry's reporting about the Iran-Contra affair. The only reason it got out was because a South American AP picked up his story that he was reporting on from South America and broadcast it out after the US AP had told him, we don't want to put this out because it might it looks bad for the president. Basically, we've gotten a lot of pressure on it. So yes, there have always been good journalists, and now we have fewer actual journalists in the field than we did before. But the news media itself and the owners have always been a shit show of suppression and framing.
Yeah. Well, so here's what I would say, right?
So
there was a point in time. There was a point in time, as John points out, prior to Telecommunications Act, being gutted and all that stuff, where the potentiality for there to be a more diverse and thriving news culture existed, where you could have the idea that we would have a lot of different outlets, and there would be some sort of regulation that would prevent them from becoming basically entertainment monopolies existed, right? Lots of different counter narratives at that point. That doesn't exist anymore, right? Because basically all news outlets are owned by 6 different people?
Yep.
6 different corporations. And so we're now in a situation where that doesn't occur. Secondary, and I think Adair makes a good point, is that, a lot of people play journalists, but actually aren't, right? And I'm looking at MSNBC. It's like a lot of people, they play...
They just ran a commercial that had the person that used to work for George Bush in their list, as they were flashing people that they called journalists. And it's like, I don't even think she claims to be a journalist. She was a press person. I can't remember exactly what her job was. But they're literally calling people that aren't even journalists beyond the calling them out for not being good journalists. Continue, sorry.
Yeah, and insofar there is fake news, I would say there's definitely a lack of transparency about what and a confusion about what actually constitutes what news is. Similarly, there's also a lot of just at their job as it comes to reporting, because they don't know what they're talking about certain things, because their job is to report, but they make errors in judgment when it comes to stuff like law. I think we saw what Dave Weigel made an error when it came to law. We see Lots he makes very error when it comes to law. What else happened where it came to
when he did that, Dave was writing an opinion piece when he did make that error judgment. He was writing his opinion.
Yeah, but here's the thing, right? And this is why I don't agree with that. So that sort of what would you call it?
It's an excuse.
It's an excuse. It's anything you put on a news site will be interpreted as news by the vast majority of people. I think the whole op-ed section of a newspaper, at least, or rather, if it's not interpreted as news, it will be interpreted as true. Because they don't assume that you're just printing things that are interesting, all right? It has platforming someone on a news site has weight to it.
Yeah.
And so same with Jonathan Capehart, who published that piece about Bernie not about the photo. What was that? It was like Bernie not being at the march.
Yeah, that photo isn't Bernie. That's what he said.
Yeah, photo isn't Bernie. And then when he got in touch with the person, was like, yo, that was him actually.
He got called out by a lot of people and got really angry at them and started being spiteful, and then mentioned, days later, it's like, I'm going to do the journalism now to go talk to the people, and people called him out. It's like, aren't you supposed to do that before you write the story, claiming that it's not him? And the correction was pretty bad.
We started a hashtag.
I'm one of many people that got blocked from Jonathan Capehart as a result of that. So.
Well, yeah.
The hashtag was Capehart Block Party. It was awesome. I was a part of it.
Yeah, because so that distinguishing between here's the news source, the news portion of our news site, and here's the, reader beware, it may or may not be true portion of our news site that's too cute for me. That's too cute by half. And so the Russia thing comes across to me as being the biggest example of the news becoming just obsessed. Again, the media becoming obsessed with something that lacks what I would consider the substance. Exactly, the substance to be worthy of news. And we see that MSNBC all the time. Rachel Maddow has gone down that path where you would think MSNBC in the age of Trump would be doing their best to enlighten people as to the awful ghoulish nature of the Republican Party, but they focus so much on this Russia thing that it becomes, in essence, it's not important. It should definitely be investigated, but should be de-emphasized as their platform.
So let's call these organizations what they are. They're not just media organizations; they're also revolving doors, particularly partisan news organizations. Yes. MSNBC and Fox News in particular are revolving doors to the Democratic and Republican Party, respectively. So MSNBC is not going to be doing anything that's out of line with what the Democratic Party is wanting them to do. The Democratic Party line right now is just hold Trump to Russia, make Trump seem like a foreign agent, and if we can make him seem like a foreign agent, if we can accuse him of treason, then by association, all the Republicans are also treasonous, right? Fox News, their intention is the exact opposite. They're just going to harp on everything about all the social issues. Oh, all you Democrats are just whiny snowflake bastards, or whatever the hell you want to call us, because you don't like my racism and misogyny. Right? That is exactly, they're revolving doors for two separate parties, so they're not going to fall out of the party line. And that's something we also have to take into account. These are the media wings of political operations. These are the owners of these stations give millions and millions and millions of dollars to the candidates and political parties that they feel represents them best, and therefore the news coverage on their news sites and shows are going to reflect that. There has to be a hard division of news media and politics. You can cover politics, and if you cover politics, you cannot give money to politicians or political organizations, because then that muddies the water, and that shows a distinct interest in getting out one narrative versus the truth.
And the perfect example of when that is bipartisan is Comcast and net neutrality. I mean, Comcast has no coverage of net neutrality right now, and we're about to have it rolled back. They didn't have any coverage about, TPP. In fact, when Ed Schultz was talking TPP, he was fired. They always cover the wars favorably, and MSNBC pulled Phil Donahue when he had the most powerful and popular show on the air, and they pulled him when he came out against the Iraq War. So
they didn't pull him. Was it Chris? Not the Chris Matthews? I always get Chris Matthews and Lawrence O'Donnell confused, but the one who's on now, who's also really popular, I think it's Chris Matthews, the one who yells a lot.
Yeah, the one with the big forehead. Yeah, the big forehead. That's Chris Matthews.
Basically, he called Phil Donahue out for being un-American for not supporting the war. Was it on air for being unpatriotic, and that's why Phil Donahue was fired. It's that was one of the most disgusting things in the world. And so that's why I say, the media is failing at holding Trump accountable for pushing war in North Korea, and they're teaching him, a very dangerous
and Iran
and Iran, and they're teaching him. And similarly, talk about the media, like you said, the silence around certain issues in the media is deafening. Not only net neutrality, but the way the Saudi Arabian deal was covered, and the lack of emphasis on the Saudi Arabia's role in basically destroying Yemen, and America's role in basically destroying Yemen. That became like a footnote in a variety of articles about the arms deal. Like, okay, hey, this arms deal was an Obama era thing, but also is just going to be used to commit further, atrocities in Yemen.
And they're not talking about how where the arms deal is actually building up the infrastructure in Saudi Arabia for them to manufacture these arms themselves in preparation for their upcoming war with Iran.
They can just and then there was another article in the by was it Kevin Drum about how you shouldn't be against Democrats shouldn't be against the arms industry because it puts people back to work in a certain number of states. Like,
that wasn't sarcasm.
That was disgusting.
Oh man, all right.
And that wasn't Kevin Drum. That was in the Atlantic. Kevin Drum's was healthcare costs. Yeah, healthcare's expensive. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I did just so many bad takes. I get them all confused in my head. That's my fault. This is why I'm not news, because I have a bad memory.
Well, don't forget that the Atlantic is run by war criminals, and the Mother Jones is run by a woman who just doesn't want to see poor people anymore. So.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Ooh. Anyway, okay. Yeah. So I want to move on. I want to move on a bit to a slightly connected topic. Okay. So in the beginning, I said that I think that Trump is Trump is in a very uniquely Trump is a very uniquely American problem. Like, Trump is very, despite what people want to believe about America, Trump is a very uniquely American thing. And in that way, his rise to power was facilitated by the fact that he appeals to the worst things about America at its core. But in a lot of ways, it's being played off as though he is an anomaly. And I add that little foundation because the question now becomes, Trump is so scandalous that a lot of the things he's actually getting through are going underappreciated. And of course, he's been a bit of a he's been a bit of a mess legislatively. I think that that's relatively okay. Like, the legislation that he wanted to pass, the Muslim ban, the repeal and replace stuff, that's been cut. That's been stopped. When it comes to executive orders, like we mentioned earlier, and SCOTUS stuff, he's been very, very successful. To more or less is, I think, a decent term, but that really doesn't get as much play as it probably should, because the scandals just, again, appeal to that clickbait nature of the news.
Yeah, and everything that he does is covered in such a negative light that when he does something good, like defund the drugs it's immediately a huge negative and portrayed as such. But I think a lot of the stuff we're seeing from Trump is not, and legislatively that's going to be successful, it's not flashy, but it is insidious. And it's stuff that the GOP has been wanting and has been on their Christmas wish list for a long time.
That's such a good point, right? So let's talk about his budget, his budget thing. Despite it being incredibly mathematically impossible, apparently, according to Stiglitz. It's very GOP. Like, it's rob from the poor, give to the rich, defund the social safety net, give to the rich. Like that's the GOP thing, and we should never forget that. So go ahead. Over to you.
Adair, were you?
So I was going to let you go on.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, yeah, the estate tax. Bernie grilled Mulvaney pretty good on that in open session, asking him about why is it that you think you need to cut Medicaid and give the Walton family $57 billion tax cut, and basically it was mostly a scramble from Mulvaney, but it was it's absurd. But that is repealing the estate tax isn't something that Trump came up with. That despite that's him a lot. But go ahead.
Yeah, it's been going for 10 years. They've been calling it a death tax when it only affects like 1%.
Thank you, Frank Luntz, for that.
It affects like 0.1 of the top 1% of like people in any significant amount. And basically it's just saying, hey, you're not going to be able to give your kids $600 billion because you died. You're going to need to give some of that so we can actually continue to fund the government. But they can have the rest of, the $599 billion.
Well, it's like, the first.
Whatever.
Well, essentially what happens is as it stands now, the first roughly 5 million, depending on if it's single or a couple, is taxed or is tax free, and then any wealth estate beyond that then gets taxed at a higher rate, roughly around like 50%. And so there's a few circumstances like where there's a family farm that's got a lot of assets or very large, blah 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 blah, where it could impact some regular everyday folks, but that's the case of 1 in 100. The most of the time you're talking about Walton family or the Johnson family, or the people that have dynasties and are trying to pass down billions of dollars, and it would save them an unimaginable amount of money. And so but it's something again like it's been out for 10 years.
Well, I mean, he certainly rolled back again like these Obama era regulations, but then of course he did sign the bill destroying, implicating internet privacy laws. He did a lot of things that he's done. It's not that they're not reported, it's just that they sort of fall to the wayside to support this Russia narrative, which has this grand Russia conspiracy, which takes over, the news spotlight, and B, to support this, because they sort of his successes, whether they be successes from the general, hey, well, this isn't so bad for America successes like defunding the drug czar, or successes from the establishment perspective, are kind of washed away to support this kind of narrative that exists out there, that he's just some sort of bumbling fool and he's failing at everything. And that's a narrative I disagree with for two reasons. A, because it obscures, for two reasons that obscures two different things, rather. A, because it obscures, like I said, his successes. And again, successes that I have to argue would probably have been done under most Republican candidates, if not all of them, as well as successes that would probably have been done under a vast majority of Democratic president, at least under Clinton. Right.
Yeah,
that's
I think that's an important point that gets lost, is that this stuff would have been pushed by basically anybody that would have been in there. But go ahead. Other than maybe his band.
He definitely empowered the ICE in a way that is not, would not have been happening under
immigration
anybody
else.
Is the one place.
Clinton, I honestly think Clinton might have went along that route. Is again, we have to look back to Obama. He had, a lot of communities are calling him the deporter in chief. Yeah. He deported more people than any other president. I don't care if you say that, turnaways at the border or deportation. That's a deportation is a deportation. Now, mind you, he did do some good things, right? And I think we're seeing the complete opposite effect here, right, between Trump and Obama, especially with more liberal media outlets. And by that I mean neoliberal, right? When Obama did something wrong, you couldn't chastise Obama. You just look at everything he did. Like, oh, he did all these things right, right? The exact reverse is true with Trump, and it was the opposite, with Obama, with Fox News. Anything he did right, they would find one thing he did wrong and just harp on it. So that's just kind of the media narrative. But the issue is Trump can do things that we agree with. That's fine. That's absolutely acceptable. However, that does not make us Trump supporters. And that's kind of what we're seeing played out, especially in the MSNBC folks and the CNN and that ridiculous Clinton crowd, is they say, well, if you support anything that Trump has ever even suggested, you support Trump in everything he does, and therefore you're a misogynist or you're a racist or you're this or you're that or you're this other thing. And the fact of the matter is, he and Clinton are the same damn person. Trump just says the things Clinton says in private.
Well,
that's all it is.
So here's why I say that. Okay, so let me just finish.
And less eloquently.
Oh yeah, well let me just finish my one statement. I was gonna say, yeah, not only does treating Trump like this bumbling fool who gets nothing wrong, who's just like the tool of Putin, obscure the fact that he is, in a lot of ways sending America back, environmentally, internet wise, all the other things. But it also obscures the larger point that there are these mechanisms in place behind him, and largely Trump is just a rubber stamp for a lot of this stuff that Ryan is trying to do. And in being that rubber stamp and being the face of this legislation, at least in a lot of ways, it does kind of healing to some people. A lot of what gets done is Ryan basically runs the country, which is a frightening thing. Ryan and the people are putting the executive action in front of Trump, but Trump's general buffoonery and the way he assaults people's sensibilities, it does color the legislation, despite it not really being of his own creation. But go ahead, John. I'm sorry.
Well, the only thing I was going to say with Trump is that, like, with Obama, you got the feeling that he was sitting in these meetings, he was making decisions, and he was actually involved in paying attention. With Trump, you just get the feeling that, if Bannon puts something in front of him, one day he's going to sign it, and if Reince Priebus puts something in front of him the next day, he's going to sign that. And he doesn't really care about this. He's in over his head, and so you get that whole idea of Ryan running the country because the only ideas and the only things that the Republican Party has had in place and established is this think tank Ryan agenda of Randian philosophy-driven, basically austerity on steroids to benefit the rich. And so, it goes back to the Reagan economics and the trickle-down theory of we're going to cut taxes for the wealthy, and they're going to, well, we know for 40 years they're not going to create jobs, but they're going to give us a lot of money so that we keep doing these policies. So that's the stuff that was already in place when Trump took office, and that's the stuff we're seeing being put in now.
Well, I see, and I agree with you. And that's why I guess my point is this: like, all of the government has been reduced. All of the government's failures have been reduced down to Trump, even though we know that he is this bumbling, he is personally incompetent, right? So things that are being done by him are not really being done by him. They're being put in front of him, and he's signing them because someone's whispering in his ear, like, if you just sign this, people will like you. People will think you're a strong president.
Yeah, like the conversation he had with the King of Saudi Arabia. He had a 5-minute conversation with the King of Saudi Arabia, who is himself mentally feeble, and he changes his policy and even his talking points on Saudi Arabia. He had a 5-minute conversation with the Chinese and changed his whole position. Whenever someone talks to him, he's immediately going to change and go that direction. So,
go ahead. Sorry.
So I was going to say, that's why I'm backing up your point, where all the stuff that's happening is just happening as a direct result of an agenda that was already in place when he took office.
Well, so the failure here becomes the inability of people to bridge that gap, right? And say Trump is just a sock puppet, not a sock puppet for Putin, but a sock puppet for, specifically people like Bannon and Bannon, white supremacist agenda, Ryan's neo-feudal corporate fiefdom agenda, things that have been going on for the past 20 or 30 years are now getting this, they're just getting Trump washed. And, of course, it's easy to resist Trump, but at the end of the day, he's actually just a rubber stamp. And like I said, a lot of these things that people consider that he's rolling back during the Obama era didn't exist during the Obama era. They just did not exist. And a lot of things that are being pushed forth now, whether it be the AHCA or this new budget, are things that would have happened regardless. And it behooves the Democrats to actually try to, if they were being legitimate, or not legitimate, if they were being smart, actually try to tie the GOP to these things and not just pretend like they're Trump. But anytime you hear, people talk about a leader of a country being bumbling or insane or crazy or any of these reductionist terms, they're just erasing the larger mechanisms that exist behind them that are making these terms. So I just want to shift the conversation. Sorry for coughing, I'm a bit sick. Last week we had a conversation about Pence being worse, right? And that was my larger point there. Because if we're going to be judging the validity of these policies by the person who's rubber stamping them, even if you think Pence is incompetent legislatively, which his record in Indiana might indicate, he is a much more palatable rubber stamp. He is a much more he has the ear and the belief of the Freedom Caucus, who doesn't like Trump because apparently he's not brutal enough. But and not only that, Pence is a religious zealot, and he is a war hawk. He's a Christian fundamentalist. All right, go ahead.
I was just going to say.
That's why I think.
I was just going to say that they need Trump. They desperately need, Democrats and Republicans need Trump to be the face for all of this stuff, because they want everybody to go back to sleep after Trump's gone. They want to wear everybody out, get all the energy out, get all the outrage out, and be happy to settle with Pence versus Tim Kaine or some sort of some variation of that, and go back to the game that they were playing, trying to sell us the agenda from their corporate billionaire sponsors. That's what they need from us, and they need from Trump. And so they're gonna do anything and everything they can. And it seems like there's no shame. They genuinely believe that there's no way enough of us will catch on to do anything about it. But go ahead.
Well, the media, since Trump has been taken office, has been on the slow road to normalizing Pence, right? Bill Maher and David Frum were normalizing Pence the other day. I think there was an article in BuzzFeed about how Pence is starting to look more attractive. And, the smarter people out there, know about Pence. They know he's a religious fundamentalist. They know he makes like awkward statements about horses, which
there's no way Pence would never get away. Like Pence is much worse than Trump. It's just he doesn't talk about how he's much worse. It's like
he's much more palatable. He's much more genial. He may be
polite.
Crazy.
He's just an old white politician.
People. No, he's way worse. He's
evil, dude.
Yeah,
When I say
very disturbed. Sorry.
No, wait, because I'm not arguing that he's not worse. What I'm saying is, when I say he's an old white politician, that's all people see, and that's all they need to feel in this patriarchal white supremacist country. That's all they need to see. Is if there's an old white man in charge,
they see their conservative grandpa.
I think
exactly. They don't see the actual threat that he is.
And not the
I think even more than
one,
being
the nice
old and
one.
white, I think
the church going.
He's also polite.
Yeah.
He won't be having parties when the AHCA is signed through. Although I still don't think it's going to go through the Senate, right? Like they're going to.
He would. He just wouldn't do it. He just wouldn't be covered, right? Like it wouldn't be covered. He would invite people over, but the media just like, oh yeah, no, the president's just throwing the party, woo, whatever.
Right.
Democrats started singing when they passed the ACHA in the House. I mean, seriously, like. Let's bear that in mind, too. Democrats were happy. They were overjoyed that it passed the House.
Yeah, I can't.
We're gonna talk about
that's a great example of them both celebrating that as what's wrong with our system. Go ahead.
I was gonna say we're gonna talk about the Democrats in the second half of the show, but go ahead.
We're in the last 10 minutes, but yeah, he means on the sound.
Yeah. Unless you mean by second half, you mean the podcast? Because this live shit's almost over, fam.
But it's not that Pence is normal, right? It's not that Pence is actually normal. And so I think people who know Pence know that. But you got to understand, like this is still lesser of two evils America. This is still people who, who are going to be judging Pence based on the standard of what they experienced under Trump, which is constant childish tweeting, constant, missteps with Sean Spicer, who is incredibly stupid, right?
Pence is the polite version of this guy who just recently chokeslammed the reporter who said about retirement that referred back to Noah and how he worked till he was 600 years old. Like that's the type of stuff that you're gonna get from a Pence president.
So you know how I know they're gonna normalize Pence is because they're already normalizing George W. Bush.
Yes.
It's like even Bernie Sanders was on TV at some point going like, "Oh, Bush was just your run-of-the-mill conservative. He wasn't a crazy liar." It's just like, yeah, he was.
Yeah, and a war criminal, and everyone in his administration
does that make him a run-of-the-mill conservative? I think maybe the question, but go ahead.
That's a meaningless term though, because at this point, people want to make this distinction between you have your paleo conservatives and your alt-right and your Tea Partiers and your neocons and your
I got one word to describe all of them.
What's your word?
Well, it's a couple words. Racist fuckhats. That's all you need to call it. Just call it what it is. Call it duck and duck. Fuck all of them.
Yeah, that makes tough dialogue, but I can't really disagree with it.
Yeah, I get it.
They tend to stop listening when you refer to them that way, though. There's a lot of things you can call them.
They're not going to listen to me. I'm black. They ain't going to listen to me.
Fair enough.
You see this?
What Pence represents to me is something that's incredibly scary, and that's the submission of the now inflamed liberal class, right?
Yes.
Like the now inflamed mainstream media. I wish to God the mainstream media is now inflamed would go to would put that work towards single payer healthcare, because as Jeff Stein reported in Vox, the Democrats still don't know if they're going to be promoting Russia for 2018 or single payer healthcare for 2018, because they just can't decide whether or not the single payer healthcare is a winning topic versus Russia. And it's like, really, can you not?
The ACA is their wet dream. That's why they don't want to campaign for single payer. It is literally a thing that it is a wet dream. It is their wildest fantasy that, oh my God, get everybody health care. you all have to pay for it out of pocket.
Yes,
that's what they want. Like that is, you want to talk dirty to a Democrat, that's how you do it. That's like
what the ACA
good.
or what it does is
But
it enshrines profits for insurance companies into law, so that by law insurance companies will always make profit. That's what the ACA does. Which is kind of
when people forget.
Wow, but go ahead.
Disgusting and perverse. Yeah,
I mean,
people forget that have revisionist history going on because they forget that the ACA almost included a public option, but was torpedoed by Joe Lieberman, right? And Howard Dean treated this idea that the ACA, like the whole idea that the ACA wouldn't have passed with single payer or some kind of or Medicare buy-in or whatever. I'm sorry, public option to Medicare buy-in is a myth because we know that because of public opinion, because they had the votes. Lieberman changed it at the last minute. Howard Dean admitted that.
Yeah,
I just wanted to say,
keep in mind that then Obama went and campaigned against people who were calling him out for not having a public option in the ACA as well. So
because they're a bunch of neo-libs.
Yeah, he went and hit the trail hard against real progressives who were calling him out for not putting a public option in the ACA.
Well, the Russia thing,
like that in Russia. You talk about Russia and you talk about the ACA, and you've got a bunch of Democrats, neoliberal Democrats, sitting around in a circle jerk, having the best time of their life because that's the shit they get off to. It makes
we're gonna go deeper into the Democrats. Haha, phrasing. Boom. I would just, I just want, as we wind down the first half, I do want to just say that it feels more as though the media is like, again, Trump is America's kryptonite in some ways. He's very uniquely American, and he appeals to all of America's weaknesses as it comes to their obsessions. Like they just can't. I mean, look at the orb thing. Even I was taken aback by the orb thing. That was
ridiculous.
And then like the other shots, like the zoom out and then the reverse shot. Like I don't know if you guys saw that, or the one with Sauron photoshopped in there. All those I think were gold. But like, I mean, wow.
Yeah,
the church is saying one Twitter with that tweet saying this is not a satanic ritual, by the way. That one's Twitter. That's it. We're done. We can end that conversation now.
So let's just wind up this conversation about Pence, right? So for me, Pence is frightening because, like as I said, he represents a good portion of the left going to sleep. We know that the MSNBC is dying to bring on more conservative pundits. We know that. Like, but for the fact that the Russia thing is so appealing to the liberal rank and file, the fight of the liberals, they would have gotten rid of. They would have moved Rachel Maddow or Chris Hayes or Chris Matthews. Chris Matthews to less primetime hour and brought over basically some equivalent to Joe Scarborough to do 7 or 8 o'clock. But all it is the ring. So like I think Pence represents definitely the exact same things that are being done under Trump get done under Pence. But he's still just rubber stamp for neoliberals in the Senate. He's still just rubber stamp for Paul Ryan, but he's also more used to maneuvering in this government space. He knows how to make friends. He knows how not to upset these agencies. Let's be honest, Trump is also upsetting with these executive orders that have very little mandate and have like very little time. Like he's also upsetting the TSA and these agencies that are in charge of actually acting out these executive orders.
Yeah.
We know that when time, so I just want to say quickly, you make sure to check out the SoundCloud to catch more. And that's all. I'll just say that for now, and we'll save the rest. You guys can say some parting words.
Okay, so the one last thing about Pence though is that also it's not just the
Well, we're supposed to stop a little early so that they can get everything going on their side. So
I mean, we don't need parting words. We're not leaving.
I would actually before we're gonna get all caught up in this, I want to make an announcement real quick. Please join us this Saturday for a special episode of the Discourse. Recently, over the past week, there's been a lot of actions of police brutality here in Olympia, Washington, and in particular at my college, the Evergreen State College. We'll be sitting down, we'll be talking about that, and in the broader sense, black uprisings on college campuses. Please join us for that. It will be this Saturday, time to be determined, but we will tweet it out.
So we're going to move into the fun half of the show where we're going to discuss the DNC, what's going on with them. We're going to discuss Ben Jacobs being choke slammed by Gianforte. And we're going to talk about the DNC lawsuit and the Seth Rich conspiracy stuff going on as well. Thank you for joining us so far. Please stay tuned to the Benjamin Dixon Show, which is going to be on right after us. If you are on the Benjamin Dixon Show channel, please make sure to subscribe, like, and share the video. Subscribe to whatever channel you're watching on. Please go over to the Discourse YouTube channel and subscribe there as well. If you'd like, please go to the SoundCloud, which the link should be in the bottom. And also, if you have the ability to, we know it's very expensive, please become a patron. There'll be new rewards available on Patreon very soon. But for right now, and for into perpetuity, I do not plan on ever gating off any content. Thank you all, and have a good night. Take us out, Rich. We're going to the very half of the show where I can say words like "fuck boy."
Thank you.
Shut the hell up.
Here we go. All right. I'm just gonna stop.
Brandon sucks.